Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga Fantasy Show, brought to you by Over the Bar, getting ourselves ready for match week 12. And yeah, as you can see this morning, it is not myself and Rune, it is myself and friend of the show, Ultan, returning for your second appearance. Of course, you helped us out with predictions a few weeks ago, and you've done the very, very kind and brave job of jumping in to replace Rune, obviously for scheduling demands. So top man for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having me. It's a hard act to follow. Rune is pretty brilliant at what he does, but fans, don't worry. I've been in contact with him and I've run through my picks with him. So these are all approved by Rune as well as myself. So
Certified, approved by Rune. Good stuff.
exactly. Yeah.
Top
Spot
man.
on. Yeah,
So,
it should be fine. And it's not my first rodeo when it comes to Fantasy Bundesliga. I used to do plenty of kind of threads and stuff on Twitter.
yeah, exactly that.
Usually around
So
the on sale players. So that's all gone now, thanks to the cruel mistress that is Fantasy Bundesliga. But we're back to this now. So looking forward to it.
yeah, no, it should be a good show. Yeah, very much looking forward to it. Great to see that we've got a load of people already in the comments with some questions. So yeah, we're in good hands. So I think obviously without further delay, let's just quickly say, of course, please can you leave a thumbs up on the show? Got some comments already. Get your questions in. Be as nice as you can to Ultan during this show. Make sure you subscribe as well, and make sure you find and follow Bulinews over on X and Blue Sky. Right, without further delay, we'll kickstart with defenders, and we'll get them on the bottom of your screen there. And so I'll hand over to you now, Ultan, to run us through your three picks, and then any other honourables, and then we'll spin over to some questions as well. So over to you.
Yeah, so it pretty much comes as a surprise that Nathaniel Brown is here again. I was chatting to Rune as well during the week, and we were talking about going for Andy Collins, which is on the right-hand side of Frankfurt's defence. But last night I saw that Collins had started at right back against Midtjylland in Denmark, so I thought maybe it's best going against him and going with Brown. And I think it's his spot to lose. The words from Dino Topmuller is that it's his spot. And to me, that only gives me a great vote of confidence to keep him in there. Like, it's hard to see how he loses that to, I think, either Nkunku or T8, but it looks like it's his to lose. And unless he has a really poor performance in the time coming, that's the only way he'll give that up. And for 5 million, it makes perfect sense to own him. He's looked really impressive so far. I haven't actually watched too much of Frankfurt lately, but I remember seeing him on his starting debut, I suppose, for Bochum, and scored a goal in that game. And I actually did report on the game against Stuttgart, your beloved Stuttgart, and he sneaked a goal in there too. So 2 goals in 3 games in the Bundesliga is not bad going at all for a fullback. And again, T8 seems to be on the international duty when it comes to Europa League. Same for Nkunku, who played at left mid, so it should be his spot to walk into. And even looking ahead to the following week too, I kind of like to plan my transfers in accordance with moves going into the next week. And Matchday 13 against Augsburg is a pretty nice fixture as well. So that would be my budget pick for that week, for this week rather. And mid-price, I've gone with Willi Orban. May come as a surprise with RB Leipzig kind of struggling at the moment. Funny enough, the last time I was on here, I think Dortmund were the team struggling, my beloved Dortmund. And since then, it's been strength to strength, whereas Leipzig, I think I might put the kiss of death on them on the prediction show. They've gone the other way and lost everything. But Willi Orban has been, Mr. Reliable in defence for them in the fantasy game. And he's been brilliant in the duel, brilliant passing numbers, great aerial threat from set pieces. He's still scoring goals despite Leipzig's kind of struggles up there up front. And he's averaging around 240 points match day, which you can't really go wrong with. They're playing, I think it's Wolfsburg this week, and they've been really strong back. 1 goal conceded in 5 games all season at home. Like, stats speak for themselves, so they're not conceding many goals despite their poor form. And then again, looking forward to next week, an away game against Holstein Kiel. It's pretty appetizing there too, for plenty of control of the game and stuff. So that gives you kind of a 2-for-1 option as well. And then going into the premium section, I've gone with Jeremy Frimpong. it's a lot of money, and I understand that a lot of people will probably already have his left-hand side teammate, Ronaldo, but he could pull up this week. I watched them on Tuesday night against Salzburg, and times he's playing like a right forward. You know, he was
Yeah.
getting in there, creating chances, doing what he loves to do, and attack the goal and stuff on several occasions. Probably could have had an assist or a goal or two if he was a bit more lucky, but didn't materialise in the end. But I think it's going to be a tough game for Union Berlin without Diego Leite. It looks like he's missing, and he's been an absolute stalwart at the back for them. So I'd fully expect Frimpong to capitalise on that right hand side, Union's left, and lots of possession. The usual kind of Union Berlin football, sitting in, looking to hit in the counter. So you'd imagine Leverkusen will dominate possession there and really kind of put a stranglehold on things, and should give chances to him to at least set up Schick or Wirtz at least.
Excellent stuff. So yes, got some good questions in the comments right now, so we'll come to them in just 1 second. But were there any honourable mentions, Altan, that you wanted to mention for the defender area of the pitch?
Yeah, a couple. Yeah, again, the aforementioned Andy Collins. I still think he could start. He's probably less likely now after playing a good chunk of the time over against Midtjylland, but for 4 million, it's not the worst risk if you want like a bit of a bench option, you know, maybe like a fifth defender. He could still feature. I don't think I'd sell him just yet. I'd look at the lineups on, say, League Insider and stuff. Last night he was still in there despite playing the match, but he could still do well. And I've also gone with Marius Wolf, again, a former BVB man. In the absence of Janulis on the left-hand side for Augsburg, I've gone with Herman. So I think he could be good for 7 million too. Would I trust Augsburg as much without Kevin Schlotterbeck at the back? Probably not. I think he's very reliable. But yeah, I don't know. I think he could still do well for that price. You know, you have to temper your expectations a bit.
Yeah.
In the mid-price section, I went with Eric Schmidt. Smith rather off St. Pauli. Got better time to go for a St. Pauli player. Hopefully break their scoreless defensive run or run at home, lack of goals.
Yeah.
Because he's got good set piece threat and he's got lots of build up in his game too. He's kind of probably the most technical centre half they have in their three, so I'd expect a lot from him. And then for the premium section, there wasn't too many other options there. Maybe you could look at Mitchell Weiser, or maybe you could look at possibly Mittelstadt too. But I think that's a difficult game to call. I think I'd rather go with Frimpong in this scenario.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. Right, let's get some viewer questions then, obviously, for our fantastic community. Lawrence has said that he's still celebrating Thanksgiving with his family, so can't tune in, but wanted to ask about a striker. So, Lawrence, we will get to that for you later on in the show when we're doing strikers. Broody checking in saying, good morning, everyone. Let's have a look at this for you. Having some valuation... negative results. Right, let's do the second one from you, Broody. Let's bring that up on screen for you. Second question is, so this is more in relation to defenders. Would you keep Catchy for the upcoming match day or switch to Brown/Collins from Frankfurt? So obviously, Altan, you've pretty much already alluded to the two aforementioned Frankfurt assets there. So is it fair to say that for Broody's question, you would go for a switch out with Catchy?
Actually, Catchy was someone I meant to mention as well. We could nearly go through the whole list of top defenders, such the power of the best defenders of each team, and Catchy's right up there at the moment. He easily could have slotted into my mid-price section there, but I kind of went with the fixtures, and just with Hoffenheim's kind of takeover and change in management, you can kind of see a lift like they had against Leipzig last week. Personally speaking, I wouldn't have a problem with keeping Catchy. I think he's got a good fixture for this week. He's been pretty in form lately. I mean, he was good against Dortmund before the international break. He's good last week against Kiel. I think he's in good form at the moment, and I'm pretty sure he has set piece duties, corners, etc. And he's quite involved in the build-up play. He's got a great eye for a pass. So I think unless the money you get from buying Collins and what's her man again, Brown, I think unless the money you save can be invested elsewhere and perhaps get you a better player, that might be the only reason I would sell Catchy this week. But otherwise, I think he's a very reasonable hold and understandable hold.
Yeah, No, absolutely. Great question there. Thank you very much for that. Next question up. Yeah, again, similar sort of thing we've got here from David. So thank you for this question. Want to include a cheap Frankfurt defender, considering Brown and Collins. What are your thoughts on which one you would pick, guys? But obviously, yeah, as you can already, hopefully, if you've been watching so far, David and Altan's nailed down Nathaniel Brown as his pick, but yeah, it's kind of either or. But obviously, based on what we saw from Frankfurt last night, selection wise, probably best to go with Ultan's pick on Nathaniel Brown there. Let's just quickly move down the list. Broody also giving you a nice compliment there. Ultan, very nice emblem at the back of the wall, Hedger BVB. Yeah, that is a very nice setup indeed. Right, next question. Let's have a look. In from Goal Machine. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for tuning in. Stick to Grimaldo or distribute the fund? Well, I mean, is Grimaldo just starting to wake up as a fantasy asset after he banged in that lovely free kick on, when was it, Tuesday or Wednesday night in the Champions League? It's been slightly underwhelming so far from a fantasy asset, Ultan, but he's kind of one of those players where you're just super petrified to take him out just in case he does what he can do.
Yeah, nail on the head right there. I've played this game for a good few years, and as time goes on, you become more and more afraid of selling the biggest assets, your likes, your Kanes, your Grimaldos. Much as I'd love to sell Kane this week ahead of their Classicer, but can't be doing that. It's just too risky. Grimaldo, yeah, I mean, midweek he could have had a hat-trick. In fact, like, he was even taking on shots in the 80th and 90th minute and testing Schlager, pulling out some brilliant saves to deny him the third. So no, I think he's just gone from strength to strength at the moment. I'd probably stave against selling him, but you can go with that, and if it pays off, I mean, it can be very handsome in the end if it worked out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, tricky one there, but I'm leaning on the sticking with for now, and yeah, possibly doubling up and bringing in Frimpong. Nick will answer your question in regards to Nabel in a moment as we work our way further up the pitch. Question in from Yona. Good morning, Yona. Let's have a look at your question. Thanks very much for submitting one and watching. What do you think about Wagnerman with the VfB injury issues? He is playing very advanced. This is very, very true. And then against Werder, could be again in for a big score. What are your thoughts? I mean, well, if we're talking about VfB players, that I'm hoping that we all see a massive upturn in performance based on what we watched the other night. Still makes my skin crawl, that performance. It really does. That was truly the worst I've seen from VfB, since Hoeneß came in, basically. And Wagnerman, it is exactly a great point, really, from Jona, in terms of he is likely to be operating further forward again, depending on who fills that right back spot, because Stenzel didn't cover himself in glory. Nor did Wagnerman when he went further back after they made the halftime sub with Rieder coming on. So, what do you reckon, Altan? Is he a safe bet to put? He's a safe bet to put if we're expecting him to play in that advanced role, I guess.
This is most certainly your wheelhouse, so I'd only echo your message there. Wagnerman was brilliant last year. I think when he was a good deal cheaper than he is this year. I think he's about maybe $12 million or so. I could be wrong. It's not a bad idea. I mean, I'd always back a player that's playing out of position. If you're playing in the right mid or an attacking mid role, they can definitely lead to chances. And Stuttgart are still a dominant team. They're definitely one of the top 5 sides in Germany. And I think what we saw midweek is just a flash in the pan, perhaps maybe a sense of over expectancy and maybe expecting to win against a lesser opponent. But again, injuries can be harmful, and it's not an easy place to go against Red Star. So I wouldn't hate it. Certainly wouldn't be the worst transfer, but I do think there's probably a more reliable source of points out there this week, like your old bonds, for pretty much the same price. And again, points.
I do agree, yeah, and I think you're being very kind to the VFB lads there, all time. But anyway, yeah, we move on. Nick has asked as well in the comments. We'll pick this up because, yeah, Jon has already alluded to it. Altan, you've already alluded to one pick potentially, and that's obviously Eric Smith from Pauli from a defensive point of view. Anyone else kind of striking you from Pauli? It doesn't have to be defensively. It can be any other area. I guess the only other one I would have been considering was, well, obviously a few weeks ago would have been Elias Saad, but I presume he's still on the injury table.
Yeah, that's a real shame about Saad. I actually came here to mention him as well. For the season, I kind of took out the 5 main scoring metrics in the game and went through all the Bundesliga stats of individual players at the start of the season. And Saad is kind of a cheat code, essentially. He's comes up at top of the 2 Bundesliga stats in all those dimensions, like duels, shots on target, passes, everything. He's just really high. But unfortunately, he seems to have a terrible spate of injuries at the moment. Just ruled him out because he did show us once or twice there, I think in between the 2 international breaks, where he had a very strong game for them. Skipping ahead a tiny bit, Smith, Philip True on the left wing, I think, has held down his spot. Saliakis could be a good option too in defence, but I just think the added addition of free kicks, set pieces for Smith is a really appealing element to his game.
Yeah.
Again, shifting into midfield, I think Irvine might be the man you'd go for there. I think he's probably Mr. Reliable in that sense. Not the worst baseline of points. I think about 150, 160 per game. Should get enough, you know, and a captain, I'd say, should lead by example against Kiel. And up top, you have somebody in the budget section I'm listing. So I'll hold fire till then and leave some suspense.
Top man. Great questions there, everyone. And yeah, we'll cycle back to anything that we've missed so far in respect to midfielders and strikers and make sure we work our way through. But right, time now to move on and move further up the pitch. And we've got Altan's 3 midfield picks, choices from budget to mid-price to premium. So again, over to yourself, Altan, to work us through your 3 picks there.
Yeah, for the cheap pick, we're going to Bavaria this week, but maybe the smaller side of Bavaria. Alexis Club Maurice comes as no surprise, really. Again, I'm kind of playing the fixtures here. Home game against Bochum is pretty nice, and again, a player playing out of position is effectively a second striker alongside Philip Tietz. I think it's looking pretty good for him. Bochum, they've been pretty poor all season. I mean, 19 goals let in away from home in away games alone this year. It's pretty serious, but I think they have improved under Dieter Hecking since he's taken over. So that kind of tempers my expectations a little bit because, I mean, they've looked pretty solid now since he's arrived. But this man has arrived on a free to Augsburg. He was supposedly touted by Arsenal, which I think tells you a lot about him. I'd say that's a couple of years ago now, but he's obviously attracted interest when he was during his days in France. And one time I've really got a good look at him was when they played Dortmund again in Matchday 8, and he was on fire that day. Now Dortmund were very much off fire. In fact, the fire wasn't even burning. But he was brilliant that day. 2 goals, albeit through core defence. And he seems like a pretty confident lad. He's not afraid to take a shot on from 30 yards out. And me, that screams fantasy points. I think it's very appealing for that price range, and I expect him to go well. I think somebody mentioned Paul Nabel as well from Mainz. I'll get back to that at the end of the 3, because he's also someone that ran Alexis Club Maurice pretty close. Mid-price pick, I've gone with Vincenzo Grifo. Comes as no surprise again. Seems hard to believe that I'm picking someone that's got 40% ownership, but I think you can't state the fact enough that this guy is just on fire at the moment. He's the main man in Breisgau, and set piece duties, lots of involvement in the game, penalties. And I think for me, I was saying this to Rune as well, there's a massive change in him compared to his time under Strike. He's now playing like 80 or 90 minutes under Schuster, and that's massive in fantasy. Like, he was always pulled off. You could own him and you could captain him last year and stuff, and he'd be pulled off at 50, 60 minutes, maybe after scoring a free kick or something. And you're like, damn, if only he got an extra 20, 30 minutes, he could have had a brace or a hat trick. You never know with this fella.
100%.
But Schuster seems to trust him to play the full duration near enough most times. And yeah, strength to strength, brilliant player. And I think the last time, or one of the times I listened to your predictions show, it was either yourself or Peter alluded to the fact that Gladbach haven't won consecutive games in the Bundesliga since about 2021 or 2022.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm sorry, any Defoland fans out there, but like that's just an unbelievable stat. And I'd probably have no fears about Freiburg bouncing back after a pretty shocking game with 2 red cards against Dortmund last week, which I was very grateful of, needless to say. But I don't think Gladbach will bother them in Breisgau now. I think there might be at least a draw, and I think Freiburg can win that game pretty comfortably.
Very good stuff.
Then moving into the premium section, Nadim Amiri, I had the pleasure of owning him last week. He was brilliant against Kiel. I'm surprised he's only at 9% ownership. But I think, again, mentioning the aforementioned Nabel for 6 million probably might have been the reason for that, because they're kind of similar players. They have a similar style about them in a way, just slightly different roles. But he got a goal against Kiel last weekend. He's kind of the driving force behind Mainz in midfield. He's kind of present in attack and defence with that kind of box-to-box role, set piece involvement, and averaging over 200 points a game. And Hoffenheim, even though they won and bounced back, and maybe this goes against what I was saying earlier, but they did concede 3 goals despite winning 4-3. And to me, that shows that they can concede goals, even if Mainz mightn't necessarily be top scoring team every match day. Anything but usually, maybe a goal or two. But I back Nadim Amiri here. I think for that price as well, it's pretty good. Likewise with Grifo, they're almost underpriced this year, I would say, and I think that'll change next year. I'd imagine if the scoring system and price system stay the same or change.
Yeah, that's interesting in itself, actually, where you mentioned all the time about the pricing freeze that we've had this year. And this is just me throwing it out there as a question to everyone, really. But I wonder if they'll do like a January refresh of prices. I don't know if it's been hinted at all, or whether they've said anything on through their communications. But yeah, like you say, it feels like there's quite a lot of those pricings right now based on players' upturn. You look at Marmouche, for example, and it's just crazy in terms of what their value is. But either way around, I think that'll be interesting to see if we get a bit of a refresh in January during the winter break. Perhaps we'll have to see that. But yeah, sorry, did you want to mention anyone else notable before we go through questions?
Yeah, there's a few names there. I think you're right as well, just to touch on that. It'd be really interesting if they do alter it. I believe Fantasy DNL on Twitter did say that they hold the right to reserve their own changes on prices. So there'd be a lot of rage, I'd say, if they stuck Marmish up to 15 or 16 million after Christmas. It'd be a welcome return to January. A few other names anyway. Pal Nabel, as I mentioned earlier, again, seems to be kind of making that kind of double 10 role his own now alongside Lee. He could go for Lee as well in the mid-price section, but I just think Nabel at 6 million is a brilliant enabler for that price. He's been looking pretty sharp. I mean, 300 points. I think he actually got more than Amiri in the last game by a couple. And again, the time I got to see him on fire was against Dortmund. I think he got a goal and almost set up one, or nearly set up a couple. He was thinking around players, incredibly skillful, very talented, and annoyingly talented, I would say, on a day when you have a red card after 27 minutes. So he'd be another great option if you don't fancy Claude Maurice, or if you somehow own 3 Augsburg players, which I highly doubt. Into the premium section, Ritsu Doan is a nice alternative to Vincenzo Grifo, and the aforementioned Irvine of St. Pauli, again, a captain should lead by example against another promoted team and on home soil, so I think he could easily do well and step up to the plate there. And Doan's been super, just brilliant on the right wing, really attacking, seems to always get involved every now and again. Maybe a little less consistent because he doesn't have the set piece duties and whatnot, but and penalties, of course, too. But I've full faith in him to equally haul. I think he's a good chance there too. And I was also chatting to Rune, and we were saying that they have to mention one of your boys, and Chris Furyk. He's kind of had a bit of a resurgence in form there. he got a goal and assist in the last 2 games, so it's worth mentioning that he could do well too. Midweek may put you off a bit. I'm sorry to mention it again, but you never know. You never know. He could do the business now against Werder Bremen, and that would be kind of my alternate premium pick. So
yeah, great stuff there. All time, some great suggestions and picks for everyone to work their way through. Let's come to some questions then, and let's try and pick them up where we can from a positional sense. One in from Goal Machine. What to do with Musiala and Bischoff? Hold or get 2 mid-price midfielders like Grifo and Doan, and someone not sure yet, maybe Mio or Furyk. So yeah, that kind of set up with Musiala and Bischoff. Obviously, the latter has had a real upturn. Young man, well, as is Musiala, but in a less fancied team. There's a lot of talk around him right now, Ultan, isn't there? Bischoff, in terms of a transfer, loads of teams quite highly involved in it. Sounds like Frankfurt and RB Leipzig are very connected to a transfer for him. But he's been going good guns, obviously, especially in the league. What do you think to holding on him and then holding on Musiala for Der Klassiker as well?
Yeah, Der Klassiker, Musiala, it's not something I hear too often. I'm sure I will though. Yeah, Bischoff's been brilliant. Probably one of the few shining lights there for PSG in the last while. So I don't mind holding them. I think for that price, again, it's pretty good. It's a good chance. And again, it's a home game. I'll always play the fixtures in fantasy games, regardless of who's playing. It definitely is an advantage, no matter what team you are. But there's an option there for you possibly to sell him to, say, Nabel or Claude Maurice if you fancy that too. I don't think that's too much in the difference in terms of price points, maybe $1 million or 2. That is an option. I think you're talking about selling Musiala and Bischoff to get 2 kind of mid-priced options, like say Grifo and Amiri. That can work for you. It definitely can work for you. Musiala is hard to sell. He's definitely not as hard to sell as Wirtz, because Wirtz it's just a Swiss Army knife of FPL. He just has every single asset to his game, be it tackling, duels, everything. For an attacking player, it's incredible. It's a tough call. Musiala the man scares me ahead of this weekend. He's always the man alongside Kane that'll pop up with returns. I wouldn't say people will captain him as much this week. Possibly, I think a lot of people will still stay on Wirtz. But it's always hard to sell these big players for me personally. You could definitely do it though. I'm kind of sitting on the fence here. Sorry, it's hard to decide that, because again, I'm usually very against selling top asset, but you could do it. You definitely could do it and get, say, Amiri and Grifo if you sold the other 2.
Yeah, I think you're probably looking at Amiri and Grifo. Be scared to bring in 2 Freiburg assets just because I think they have dropped off. And yeah, Stuttgart, mixture of Furyk and Mio. Mio just isn't being found as often in this VfB team, and he actually played a lot better when he's played deep. And I wouldn't have a problem with that, because Karatsaw and Stiller are both massively dropped off form-wise, especially, well, I'd say them both. I don't want to pick one out, but Karatsaw was terrible midweek. He really was. So that's an interesting one to look at. Question in from Broody as well here. So what are your thoughts on Larson, Hugo Larson for Frankfurt? This is a good question. Scored yesterday as 2 good matchups coming up and pretty cheap for 7 mil. That's a great shout. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I do the scout squads with Rune on the Bundesliga or the Bulinews weekly, and we all pick our teams with players less than 20% ownership. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't say Hugo Larsson's name popped up on my lists a few times. For that price, he's brilliant, and he seems to be a real kind of box-to-box, tenacious little player. So I definitely wouldn't mind it, but my only issue is that he did play last night against Midtjylland, and he did score. Now, you can argue that maybe someone who scores and has scored, I think, in 2 consecutive Europa League games should start getting first team minutes more regularly, because I think he has been kind of kept out there with Skiri and Götze and whatnot, Shaibi as well. But I think the risk, I think just because he played last night. I'm not sure how many minutes he played. Maybe if it's less than 60, you could chance it. But I think you're
Yeah.
gone with the risk there, even though he's been in great form. And I totally understand bringing him up because it's definitely worth mentioning that he's been an interesting player to look at the last while.
Yeah, let's have a quick look. Doos. I think he might have played the full match. I can't see him being subbed. So yeah, therein is your answer. But a really good one to pose. Thank you very much for that, Broody. Question in regards to midfields from David. David T, thank you for this. Torn between Xhaka and Kimmich. I am looking for someone to score safe 200 points plus per match day. Well, aren't we all, David? And they're both good at doing that. What are your thoughts? Well, I guess if you're looking short-sighted, you're looking at the matchups for the weekend. Although I suppose you assume that Kimmich would still get on the ball an awful lot for Bayern and will be no doubt a key cog in what Vincent Kompany's side do to try and break down BVB defensively. So there is certainly that going, but obviously Xhaka, from a matchup point of view, is going to be obviously against Union. They've obviously had another day or so to recover. And yeah, Leverkusen will have a lot of the ball, an awful lot of the ball, no doubt. So I think that really stands as a big plus for Xhaka. Any extra thoughts on that one, Ultan?
Yeah, I echo that completely. I will say players like Kimmich just have this innate ability to step it up about 10 levels when it comes to playing Dortmund. I've watched them on the end of numerous hidings over the years. I'd hope it won't be the same this weekend. But yeah, I think Xhaka would be the pick between them two. Again, you look at Union, they like to sit back, they'll sit deep, they'll try and play in the counter. And Xhaka definitely has a long shot in his locker too. You know, he's not afraid to have a go and pretty accurate usually most times. He looks like he's in pretty good goal scoring form this season so far in all competitions. So I'd certainly back him. They'll have a lot more of the ball, I would imagine, than Bayern. Bayern will have their fair share too, but if you're looking for a team to be all over possession this week, it's Leverkusen against Union, who very much aren't that interested in possession.
Yeah, precisely that. All right, let's move on to forwards, and then we'll see what questions we can go through from a timing perspective at the end. So, Ultan, if you can do the honours on your three forwards, and yeah, we'll whiz through these a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I'll race through these ones. It might seem strange to pick a San Pauli player at home when they haven't scored a goal all season, but I have gone with Morgan Guilavogui. They're facing Kiel. I mean, what better chance is it than to back a San Pauli striker than the game against Kiel? You've conceded 11 goals on the road in 5 matches, and San Pauli, I do back them to kind of break the home drought this time. You know, I think it has to come eventually. And in fairness, when they've played some hard teams at home, like the likes of Leipzig and Bayern Munich and stuff, it's not easy to score against those teams. So you can understand a couple of the games where they haven't managed to hit the net, but this time might change. And yeah, it's hard to pick between their three. I think they have Adlapo, Afalayan, Eggerstein, Johannes Eggerstein, and Morgan Guilavogui. They're kind of the trio up top. It's sad he's not around, unfortunately. He would be in here 100% if he was. But this was the man I watched them play back last Saturday, and most, if not all, of the chances fell Guilavogi's way. He was inaccurate on the day. I mean, he had a header that just held over the bar and whatnot, and another kind of couple of half chances, but they seem to fall to him. So that's kind of the reason I'm backing him. But I would put a point of note at the end of that is that they do play Leverkusen in match day 13. So, you know, five transfers are very precious, and you don't want to be kind of saving the transfer for a fairly small brilliant player. I think you're much better keeping them for getting in the main men next week. So that'd be my mention there. I've got my Hugo Ekitike as the priced option. He's playing second fiddle to Marmish at the moment, and I understand I think 76% on Marmish, which is pretty remarkable, more than Kane. It kind of says a lot. So I'd understand people might want to double up on them, and that could be a good reason too. But I think in games like this, we saw it against Bochum. Ekitike can match Marmoush against these kind of lower opposition teams. And no offense to Heidenheim, but I think despite in Europe they're still playing very well. But the bubble is kind of bursting in the Bundesliga now. They haven't looked that great lately, and you can see that Schmidt is begin to experiment. I mean, we're seeing the likes of Anna and stuff playing as a striker and whatnot, which I don't think is really natural to his game, and Kaufman hasn't really settled in there. So I think they'll go there and win by a couple of goals, to be honest. And I think Ekatike can do well there. They'll be tired after playing Chelsea as well, who I didn't get to watch the game either. Kindly covered those matches for me, but I'd imagine Chelsea gave them the run around, even though it was only 2-0, which is quite respectable. But 3 goals and 1 assist in his last 3 games, so the Frenchman's definitely in form. And a home game against Augsburg the following week isn't the worst either.
True.
And then moving into the premium section, I've gone with Lois Openda. Again, Leipzig may be out of form, but I do back this for the score on the weekend. It's a hard week to pick forwards almost, because I suppose their Klassiker writes out a lot of Dortmund and Bayern options who are kind of the form teams over the last 2 or 3 games. But he has 5 goals and 11 appearances. It's not terrible considering Leipzig's attack all season hasn't really ticked. Suppose now Xavi Simons is a bit of an issue there, because he's a very, very much a creative spark in that midfield. But they certainly need a response after a pretty terrible Europa League night again for them. I mean, 5 losses in 5 now, and a damn squib against Inter Milan. So I think they have to kind of bounce back here, and I'm sure the pressure's on Marco Rose to deliver. And there's not many great managers out there, so I think you'll need the likes of Openda to step up and bang a few goals in. And again, looking forward to Matchday 13. You also have an away game against Kiel. And what better game for look forward to going into the next week than Kiel?
Yeah, that's great. Brilliant picks there, Oltan, and some great forward thinking as well there. Right, let's just try and go through a couple of questions that I know that we've got in respect to forwards, and then we'll probably close up for this morning. Want to cycle all the way back to a question that Lawrence had, and he was mentioning thoughts on the third striker. I have Kleindienst and may switch to Schick or Guirassy. Yeah, I mean, Kleindienst has been superb. He really has settled in perfectly. You know, a match up against Freiburg shouldn't necessarily scare you off keeping him, but yeah, a switch to Guirassy I feel is a risk, but Oltan, you might have other feelings on that ahead of the Klassiker. And Paddy Schick, I think he's the one who stands out the most to me in terms of those 3 right now. Form player, is looking really comfortable in the Leverkusen upturn that he's been a part of. So personally speaking, yeah, probably Paddy Schick in Union Berlin. He'll need that kind of physicality to get through the Union back line. As Oltan already mentioned, no Diego later either. So yeah, for me, that looks ideal. Any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, firstly, happy Thanksgiving. We don't celebrate that here in Ireland, but I'm very envious of the nice dinners you're getting. Yeah, no, I was chatting to Rune as well, and we'd also mentioned Schick. I mean, a hat-trick the week before, so he's definitely in hot form. The only reason I actually went against him as my premium pick this week is just through the course of history and playing this game, I've never liked owning a striker against Union Berlin. They seem to make it very difficult for a one-man forward, and that's kind of the only reason I stayed away from that. But I actually certainly wouldn't mind picking him this week. Probably is a better matchup than Kleindienst, although Kleindienst seems to have a nice baseline of points. But yeah, Schick could be my pick of those 3.
Great stuff. One in from official DNL, a fantastic account and source for fantasy football content. So thanks for tuning in. And thank you for asking us a question. And it's around starring of the forwards this week. Who would we choose, Kane or Marmoush? Oh, that's a Sophie's choice question, isn't it? I mean, I don't think I've changed Kane other than maybe twice this season from a star perspective. And it'd probably give me the heebie-jeebies if I did change in this week. But Marmoush isn't a bad shout. I'll sit on the fence. I'd stick with Kane myself. Ultan, who would you pick?
Yeah, it's funny. I'd usually be looking to official DNL for my sources as well sometimes. So it's a pleasure to get a question from them. I'm very much the same. I'd walk with caution there if you're going to go against Kane. I think I might have even gone one better than you and only gone against Kane once this season. I'm not sure how well that went as well. So it's a risk. Like, again, not to be, I'm going to be as impartial as I can here, but Kane always pops up with goals against Dortmund. It's just, it's like water is wet and we all pay taxes. He just seems to always get a goal or two. And yeah, my big fear would be that he will do that. But I actually don't mind the Marmish one either. I thought about it myself. He has played, I suppose, last night, which is maybe put a bit of tiredness to the legs. But it's only a trip to Denmark at the end of the day. It's not that far from Frankfurt. And certainly wouldn't mind captaining him if you do fancy him. There's no reason not to back him. And I think it would be one of the games like Leverkusen where you would maybe go against Kane when Bayern play Leverkusen. Maybe Dortmund, who have definitely shown some consistency at home at least, could make it difficult. But I've just seen sometimes if an early goal goes in against Dortmund in a Bayern match, it's just worse and worse and worse and worse and
worse. Yeah, good stuff. Fantastic question to pose there. Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, official DNL. Right, well, that's us for time. We've had a nice long show this morning. It's been some awesome questions. Brilliant debut by Ultan as well with your picks and rationales behind them all. So just very quickly, if you can leave a like on the show. If I actually managed to click on the thing. Comment if you've missed us live. We'll see if we can, as per, keep an eye on the questions in the comment section up until 7:30 UK time when the Friday night game kicks off and the deadline hits. And make sure you sub and turn on notifications. And then just from a social media point of view, make sure you're following over the bar FB. And myself, I've had a rebrand and now called at Bundesliga Rory. So go follow me on X, but especially on Blue Sky, which is where you can also find Bulinews, who have also made the move over. Ultan, have you got a Blue Sky account yet, or are you sticking with X for now?
We're luckily sticking with X at the moment, but I will be on there soon. I'm usually a slow man to change. I like my comfort, but I'll be over there. The way X is going, it won't be too long.
Yeah, excellent stuff. You can find us on all good social media outlets and Instagram, of course. Thank you so much, everyone. Awesome show. Really, really good fun. Hope everyone has an excellent match week ahead. Just one about starring. What about starring Teats against Balkan? Well, there we go. It's worth a gamble, Broody, but not one I'll be taking, unfortunately. Great stuff, everyone. Thanks very much for your questions and comments. Have a great weekend. Thank you all, Tan, and we'll see you on Monday to review it all. Catch you then all. Bye.